In the shadow of a world hungry for power, coal was king. It powered the machines that built the modern world. Factories roaring, trains thundering across continents, cities rising from the darkness. Without the black gold ripped from the earth's veins, none of it would have been possible. But every ton came at a price, paid in the blood of those who dared to descend hundreds of feet into the unknown, where the air itself could turn traitor, where a single spark could unleash hell. Tonight we descend into three of history's deadliest mining disasters: Courrières, Farmington, and Senghenydd, where the hunger for coal met the unforgiving deep and the earth claimed its due. On March 10, 1906, at the Courrières coal mine in northern France, over 1,000 miners and boys descended into the depths for another grueling shift. Then, without warning, a massive explosion ripped through the tunnels. In an instant, the lives of families waiting above were changed forever. What seemed like a routine shift had become a deadly trap. Deep underground, miners were swinging picks and loading carts as they had every day. Although the company had replaced naked flames with safety lamps years earlier, those lamps were powerless against one invisible enemy: thick coal dust coating every beam and wall for decades. Methane, fire damp, seeped constantly from the coal seams, and on March 10th at 6:34 a.m., it found its spark. The tunnels erupted like a cannon. A wall of flame and pressure raced through the galleries at over 1 kilometer per second, pulverizing timber supports, hurling bodies hundreds of meters, and turning breathable air into poison. Tons of rock and shattered timbers buried entire workings, sealing off escape routes. The explosion had torn through roughly 110 kilometers of interconnected galleries. The human cost was staggering. Officially, 1,099 miners perished, still the deadliest mining disaster in European history. Hundreds more were injured, many horribly burned or poisoned by afterdamp. In the first chaotic hours, only 576 men, less than a third of those underground, managed to reach the surface alive. 20 days later, on the 30th of March, rescuers heard faint voices 300 meters underground. 13 blackened skeletal miners crawled into daylight, the last survivors of Courrières. They had stayed alive by gnawing bark from pit props, eating a dead horse that shared their tomb, and drinking water from the rock walls. 4 days after that, on the 4th of April, a 14th man was found alone. 25 days in total, they had somehow outlived the poison air. Investigations concluded the disaster began when fire damp ignited, almost certainly, either by a damaged safety lamp or by routine blasting. Once the methane flashed, the thick coal dust suspended in the air turned the spark into a firestorm. The Courrières catastrophe remains Europe's deadliest mining disaster. The public fury that followed helped drive the creation of professional rescue teams, better ventilation laws, and the first systematic fight against coal dust. November 20th, 1968. At the No. 9 coal mine near Farmington, West Virginia, miners were beginning the early shift, checking equipment, riding into the tunnels, and preparing for a normal day underground. Then, without warning, a massive explosion ripped through the mine. In an instant, the Farmington community was changed forever. Coal mining in Appalachia relied on mechanical ventilation systems to dilute and remove deadly methane gas, preventing it from building up. As long as air was moving properly, the mine was considered safe. But dangers lurked unseen below the surface. Methane gas, seeping from the coal seams, could pocket in stagnant areas where ventilation controls, like doors and barriers, failed to direct fresh air properly. In those stagnant zones, the gas built up silently, waiting for a spark from equipment to ignite it. Deep underground, the crews worked the seams, unaware of the growing threat. Above ground, as families stirred in the pre-dawn hours, the earth suddenly shook with a massive explosion. At approximately 5:30 a.m., the blast came like thunder. Fire shot through miles of tunnels, collapsing roofs and igniting coal dust in a chain reaction. The explosion was so powerful it blew debris from mine entrances and was felt across the surrounding countryside. Collapses and raging fires quickly sealed off much of the mine's vast tunnels. The human cost was devastating. 78 miners lost their lives. Over the agonizing 10 days that followed, brave rescue teams pushed forward repeatedly, only to be driven back by toxic gases, structural instability, and a series of additional explosions. 15 major blasts in total. On November 30th, 1968, officials faced a heartbreaking reality. No survivors remained. They ordered all entrances sealed with concrete, starving the underground fires of oxygen and preventing further catastrophe, entombing the 78 men forever inside. Later investigations uncovered systemic failures, inadequate ventilation controls, lax safety enforcement, and warnings about excessive methane and coal dust that had gone unheeded. The chilling reality was that these conditions for disaster had been simmering for years, hidden in plain sight until that fateful morning. The Farmington mine disaster became a turning point, sparking the toughest mine safety laws in US history. But for the community of Farmington, the cost of that lesson was paid in 78 lives buried forever underground. October 14th, 1913. At the Universal Colliery in Senghenydd, South Wales, nearly 950 miners had descended into the pit, a coal mine over 600 yards deep, for the morning shift, reaching their districts and starting work in the familiar tunnels. Without warning, a violent explosion tore through the mine. In an instant, Senghenydd was changed forever. In 1913, coal mining in Britain depended on a fragile balance: constant ventilation to clear fire damp, the explosive methane gas, and measures to control the ever-present coal dust. As long as airflow was maintained, the mine was believed to be safe. Dangerous, yes, but manageable. But unseen hazards were building. Fire damp had accumulated in the workings, and fine coal dust coated the tunnels. Breaches in new ventilation regulations allowed these threats to grow, invisible and odorless. Then, just after 8 a.m., it happened. Deep underground, an electric spark, most likely from the mine's signaling system, ignited pockets of accumulated fire damp in a sudden, catastrophic flash. The explosion was devastating. A firestorm raced through the workings, igniting gas and coal dust in a chain reaction. The blast roared through miles of tunnels, snuffing out lamps and lives in seconds. The mine was left shattered. The human cost was overwhelming. 439 miners and 1 rescuer were killed, making it still the deadliest mining disaster in British history. Entire families lost fathers and sons in a single morning. The investigation revealed grim truths: inadequate ventilation management, poor enforcement of safety rules, and coal dust left dangerously untreated. The terrifying detail was that these conditions for catastrophe had been known since the mine's deadly 1901 explosion, and ignored. 12 years earlier, on May 24, 1901, the same Universal Colliery suffered a devastating explosion. At dawn, fire damp ignited, spreading through coal dust in a series of blasts that killed 81 of the 82 men underground. The inquiry blamed inadequate dust suppression, and though reforms were promised, they went unimplemented. Justice rang hollow: no prison sentences, no real reckoning. The pit reopened within weeks and labored on until its quiet end in 1928. The Senghenydd colliery disaster remains a somber warning from history. When safety is sacrificed for profit, the depths of the earth can turn into a tomb, claiming nearly an entire generation of a community in a single devastating breath of fire. Unearthed hidden history. Unearthing new stories weekly. Follow or subscribe for more.